Shalom and welcome to my channel. In this series, we're going to talk about the history of the Hebrew language. The history of the Hebrew language is very much intertwined with the history of the nation of Israel. The Torah was given in Hebrew to the people of Israel, which is why this language became our national language for all of these years. But how did this language exactly begin? And how did it follow us while we went into exile? And in recent years, how did it make this incredible revival to be the full speaking language that we have here today in Israel? This is what this series is going to be about. In this episode, we're going to focus on the beginning, the origins of the Hebrew language. Just like we believe that the nation of Israel was chosen and the land of Israel was chosen for us out of all the lands, we believe that the Hebrew language was chosen to be the language of the Hebrew nation out of all the languages. The most appropriate language for us and for us to be given our Torah, and we even believe that the world was created in this language. So as you can imagine, there is so much spiritual, deep meaning that goes into the Hebrew language and its symbols. Even every single alphabet, there is so much meaning that goes into it. But in this episode, we're going to focus on the more historical aspect of the Hebrew language. Maybe we'll do another episode that talks more about the more symbolic, spiritual aspects of the Hebrew language and its alphabet. So it really starts with the Bible, which is the first written record of the Hebrew language. Now, in the Bible, there's a lot of different characters: Assyrian, Egyptians, Plishtim, and when they speak and when they're quoted, they're always quoted in Hebrew, even though we know they must have spoken in other languages. So the Bible is exclusively written in Hebrew, aside from two books, Ezra and Daniel, that have a few chapters in Aramaic. These two books were written after the destruction of the first temple. What's interesting is that it wasn't always called Hebrew. In the Bible, once or twice, it's even referred to as Lashon Yehudit, the Yehudis language, which means the Judah language. At some point, the nation of Israel was split into the kingdom of Israel and the kingdom of Judah. So the language of the kingdom of Judah is referred to as the Judah language. And in the Mishnah, it's also mentioned as Ivrit. Until today, this is the name Ivrit, Hebrew, used to describe the language of the Hebrew nation. But this written word is a more advanced level of the language and not really its origins. So when did it actually begin? When did people start speaking Hebrew? This is a bit confusing. On one hand, it is a holy language, the language that we believe God created the world. According to one opinion, Adam and Eve spoke in Hebrew. I saw another opinion that they spoke in Aramaic. But what we know about languages is that languages are something that evolve and develop by humans. So how does this really go together, these two things? I saw a few explanations on this. One is that God intended this language to be chosen and also to be developed by man. There was the basic initial language, and then humans developed it more and more till it was at the point where the Torah was given in this language. So the basis of Hebrew is found in the language spoken by the first man, and then over time it developed and evolved. We know Hebrew is a Semitic language and is similar to other Semitic languages such as Akkadian and Aramaic. But how are these languages similar to each other? Where did they originate from? There is a linguistic theory that all of these languages are derived from an earlier Proto-Semitic language, and that over time they grew into different languages. Or there's another theory that these different tribes lived in close vicinity to another, and that's why their different languages grew over time closer to one another. An interesting question is, did Abraham, our forefather, speak Hebrew? It's estimated that Abraham and our forefathers lived around 1800 BCE. Everyone agrees that Abraham spoke Hebrew in the land of Israel, in the land of Canaan. The question is, was this a language that he already knew before he moved to the land of Israel and he brought it with him to the land of Israel? Or was this a language that he didn't know and he picked up, and it was the language of the Canaanites living in Israel at the time, and he learned it when he got there. In Haran, where he lived, he spoke Aramaic, and then he learned it. So according to Rabbi Yehuda Halevi in the Kuzari, Hebrew was the original language, and it was passed down till the generations, and it was the language that was spoken. And then at the time of Noah and then the Tower of Babel, there became a lot of different languages, and Hebrew, Ivrit, became the language of Ever. He didn't partake in the sin of the Tower of Babel, which is why he kept the original language, Ivrit, which is named after him, Ever. His descendants, including Avraham, spoke Hebrew. Avraham spoke Aramaic as the spoken language, and he also knew Hebrew as a holy language. A different opinion, which is Ramban Nachmanides' opinion, was that Avraham spoke Aramaic, and then when he moved to Canaan, to the land of Israel, he learned Hebrew, which was the Canaanite language at the time. He initially spoke Aramaic, and he picked up on this language. At some point, this language was chosen to be the holy language, and because of that choice, that is what made this Canaanite language into the holy language, according to this opinion. This opinion also correlates more with the accepted theory and research, which was that Avraham and his family spoke Aramaic in Haran, which is located in the area of Turkey of today, and then the land of Canaan was where they spoke the Hebrew. The Amarna letters are clay tablets found in Egypt, dated back to 14th century BC, and these documents are letters sent from the kings of Canaan to the king of Egypt at the time. Now, most of these documents are written in Akkadian, but there are a few words in ancient Canaanite. Researchers say that these words are very similar to ancient Hebrew, perhaps even identical to ancient Hebrew, but even though they think that it's very similar, possibly identical, they separate these because of social, cultural, religious background. The language of the nation of Israel is Hebrew, and the language of the Canaanites who lived at the time is Canaanite. Let's talk a little bit about the alphabetical writing system. The Torah is given in the alphabetical writing system, which is super interesting because there were different writing systems at the time. It began more with pictures and symbols. In ancient Egypt, they used hieroglyphics, which is each picture means a different word. And then they moved over to the syllabary system. And the syllabary system, each symbol is a syllable, meaning ba, bi, bu, and there's hundreds of symbols. The alphabetical system, which is a more later advancement, each symbol is a letter. Like we know today, most languages today use the alphabetical system where each letter is a sound, b, I, g, d. And this makes things much more simple because to learn the syllabary system, you really had to have a lot of resources. It takes a lot of time. You have to learn hundreds of symbols, where the alphabetical system is much easier to use. There's about 20 symbols, and so masses of people are able to read it, which makes perfect sense that the Torah was given in the alphabetical system because we're commanded to learn the Torah and read the Torah and teach the Torah to our kids, and it made it much more accessible for us to do this. The Hebrew alphabetical system, there is so much more to learn about it, how ancient Hebrew alphabet was actually replaced at some point with a different alphabet, and we will learn about this in the next episodes. Hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up. Also, if you have any questions about the Hebrew language, please comment below, and I'd love to answer it in future videos of this series. Bye, see you next time.